This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Sliders, Season 5, Episode 18.
Mr. LeBeau, can you see our friend? Can you see Rembrandt? Mr. LeBeau! I can't get a pulse. He's gone.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast at the end of the slide hole. I'm Luke, here's my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Yeah, you're right. That's it. We've finished Sliders. It feels like it's been a while with these people. Although in some ways not, because I don't know who any of these characters are at the end of the show.
Yeah, well, we took the escape pod last episode, so we've jumped from episode 1 of season 5 all the way to the final episode of season 5, where mostly new characters were added, and just like I don't know any more about them other than New Quinn dresses like he's Neo from the Matrix now.
I clocked that weird long trench coat as well. That's a choice.
It's a sign of the times, I think. If you're in the late 90s, you're trying to grab that Matrix heat.
Yeah.
Or is it the Matrix heat, or is it the Columbine heat you're going for?
Jeez. Did you have that in high school where you weren't allowed to wear long coats?
I don't remember specifically, but I'm sure they probably put an end to trench coats.
Yeah.
I do remember some kid in my school made some sort of joke afterward and was immediately expelled.
Yeah, it was something that, and rightfully so, I don't think people had.
Zero tolerance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Not like now, you can do as many school shootings as you want.
Jeez. We always get to these real downer conversations to start things.
Why is that?
Bring it back up. Bring it back up, Luke. Fun things. Sunshine, cotton candy.
All right. Well, Jordan, before we get into the final episode of Sliders, we're going to do a little game. We're going to recast Sliders as a major motion picture, which, as you know from having trolled the internet for Sliders information, the super fans are dying for a Sliders reboot. So let's give it to them. Of course, we have Quinn Mallory first. Oh, I should note, before we get this, let me note something. As we saw at the top, a lot of characters have come and gone on this show. Jordan asked me which characters we're going to recast. I decided to pick anyone who had Arturo level of episodes or more. So Arturo had 40 episodes on the show. So that means we have Quinn Mallory, Wade Wells, Rembrandt Brown, Professor Maximilian Toro, and Maggie Beckett. Late edition Maggie Beckett did more episodes than even Wade did.
That's bizarre.
So she's maybe more canon than Wade.
All the episodes I watched, she hadn't convinced me she was better than a terrible actress.
And yet, more episodes than most of this cast.
There you go.
All right, well, so let's get into it. Let's start with Quinn Mallory, our star. He's going to invent a slide hole.
Okay, so I have to say right off the bat, I have two picks for all of them, but one of them are Jamie's pick and one are my pick because, as is well established, I don't know who any of the new hot stars are. So I have my ideas, and then I asked her. So I have two ideas.
Great.
Okay, I'll give hers first because I think it's probably a better idea. So it's she's sitting behind me chuckling here. Hers was an actor named Will Poulter.
Oh,
who's apparently a hot new star.
He is. You either cast him in a funny comedy or as some sort of creep.
Well, there you go. Well, he's a funny creep, Quinn Mallory.
Okay, great. My first pick was Liam Hemsworth.
You know, that was another one we were talking about last night as well. So maybe that's more on track.
I think he has an advantage because when you want to bring Colin in, you can either cast up and bring Chris Hemsworth in as Colin, or you can cast down and bring Luke Hemsworth in as Colin. So you got two options there.
Okay, I think that's pretty good. But I will maybe change the game with my pick, which is Jerry O'Connell, de-aged.
De-aged Jerry O'Connell. Oof, that's
Yeah.
That's a good pick, Jordan. That's a good pick.
Because who can do Quinn Mallory as well as he does? And he's back in. We also have the option of like a terrible, episode where you do a twin, but his twin's older now.
That's the sequel. Yeah. Well, I was trying to think. We're obviously making this as a motion picture, so I'm like, I want to make a good motion picture that people are going to go to the movie theater to see, Jordan. So I want someone bankable. Bankable to bring this in home. So I went with Vin Diesel.
Wow. So, look, if we do that, this becomes a very different movie.
It does become a very different movie. He's playing a 18-year-old.
No, I think Hemsworth is the way to go.
All right, let's go with Hemsworth. I agree. I think that's like
Yeah.
the right level for this. Yeah, Hemsworth, he's going to get his new Hunger Games franchise.
Although I think they should show up to a world at one point where everyone looks like Vin Diesel.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's just bald.
Yeah. Yeah.
No sleeves at all.
Speaking in an inarticulate way.
All right, how about Wade Wells, the tomboy computer hacker?
Okay, Jamie's pick is Haley Lou Richardson.
Oh, yes, of course. From the most recent season of, what is it, White Lotus?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Who do you got?
My first pick was an actress named Sophie Lillis, who you might know from the motion picture It or the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Mm-hmm. Redhead.
Yes, exactly. She has that short pixie cut in both those movies, so I was just like, it seemed a good fit.
Well, my pick was because I was trying to think of like who's an actress who you'd want to start the movie, but then would have to get replaced because you don't want them anymore. And so I thought, I think I'm terrible at pronunciation here. Shailene Woodley. I was like, who's someone who would come in and you go get rid of that person?
What is she from? I recognize the name, but I can't pick what a thing she's in.
She was in that HBO show with Nicole Kidman where it was all the women were fighting.
Don't think I saw it.
Big Little Lies.
Yeah, definitely didn't see it.
She was also in those Divergent movies. Remember those Divergent movies? They were supposed to be a big hit.
Lesser Hunger Games.
Yeah, that's right. She was in those.
Well, I gotta say, not winning so far.
Not winning that one. Who do you got?
I also have someone who probably we lose midway through, but probably because she leaves us for something else. And that is Jenna Ortega, famous Jenna Ortega now from Wednesday. She's too big for us, but maybe she'll get one movie out of her.
Famous writer-producer.
Writer-producer. She writes all the best lines.
Yeah, apparently.
I mean, honestly, it couldn't have been that hard.
Yeah. I never saw the show, so I couldn't speak to it.
I think your first pick, Haley
Lou Richardson. That's the one?
Haley Lou Richardson is the one. I don't know if you know her. I'm not sure if this is a blind pick for you, but I think she's great. I think she could be a good choice. She has a real like she can throw like Wade could in the show, be really exasperated by the men around her.
Right. All right. Well, I think this is starting off pretty well.
All right. Now, of course, we've got the big hitter, Professor Maximilian Arturo.
Well, I remember Jamie gave me a bunch of picks. The one I pulled out of it because I like it the most, and I don't think you'll go with it, but it's Wayne Knight.
Hey, I always love Wayne Knight, but I don't know what he's up to these days.
Yeah, I think he's just sitting on those Seinfeld and Third Rock from the Sun money.
I mean, this feels like the place where we can really cast up. So no offense to Wayne Knight, but that's a low bar. He could be like a double we see on a TV show or something.
Yeah. Well, who do you have?
My first pick is I was like really racking my brain. You want to bring in someone. It's not like a huge star anymore, but like there's a certain like you're like, oh, I know that guy. I know who that is. And I went with James Spader.
Wow, that is different. James Spader.
Current day James Spader, he's got a real look to him now that's like it's a little more professorial, but maybe I think he's got a bit more of that like darker tinge. And with his past as a Lothario, it brings that like that sexual energy you need for Arturo.
Well, my pick was really just thinking who's a little bit doughy. What actors are doughy? You can't be the lead.
I knew you would do this entirely based on weight.
So I just picked, I'm like, who's a little bit doughy? Although I don't even think he's acting much more. He's like showing up in cooking shows. But my pick is Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau. Famous director, Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
Not a bad pick, actually. He's a funner Arturo.
Yeah. Who was it you picked again?
James Spader was my first pick.
James Spader. Let's do that.
I got a second pick.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Maybe it'll beat that.
I think this second pick is going to meet your criteria, but also bring something to the table you're going to enjoy.
Okay.
Forrest Whitaker.
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Is that better?
I'm not sure. I think there's like three good choices there. They all go different ways.
No, I think James Spader is still weird enough that it brings a different energy. I think that's where we go with.
Great. We're going with James Spader. I love it. Fresh off the blacklist, it's James Spader.
Is he fresh off that?
I don't know. It might still be going. I have no idea. Like The Good Doctor. It just continues without my knowledge.
It's amazing these shows keep going. Okay, we got Rembrandt, Crying Man Brown.
Yeah. Want me to start this time? Give you a break?
Sure.
So my first pick, maybe a little on the nose, and maybe because I've seen him play Ray, but I thought Jamie Foxx might be a good pick.
Jamie Foxx. Yeah, okay. We went younger, so Jamie's pick was an actor that I don't know very well, but William Jackson Harper is his name.
What would I know him from?
What's he from?
Sheedy on The Good Place.
He's from The Good Place, apparently.
Oh, yes, I could hear in the background. Sheedy, he's good. He'd be younger than the rest of the cast, but he'd be good.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. He's a breakout young star.
He's a hot up-and-comer on the way to his big break when he gets sucked into the slide hole.
Actually, is that a better plot line than an old kind of guy who's tired and isn't popular anymore? What is a better character?
I guess it makes it harder for him to go to other worlds and already be famous.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I guess you could still have him. He's like, I broke out 2 years earlier.
Yeah, although it seems like that they dropped that from his character anyways in these last episodes. He doesn't really mention that stuff because they're like, well, we can't just have the main character now constantly complain about not being famous.
That's true. It is too bad. I did miss those episodes where he's just like, time to sing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my next one, sort of in a similar vein, I was trying to think of a musician, actor, sort of something that would like give us a little something. And I was having some trouble until I was like hit on the little thing. I stayed older here, Jordan, but I hit on an idea that I don't know how you'll feel about, but I think has potential. Queen Latifah.
You know what? It's very good. It's very, very good, Luke. It's better than my pick.
All right, let's hear it.
So I was just trying to think of like hot, popular, could put a good name on the poster. Daniel Kaluuya.
Oh yeah. He's got a great. Can we get him though? Will he do? I guess Rembrandt's a lead role.
It's a lead role.
By the fourth movie, he's in charge. Everyone else is gone.
I think we switch this though. I think it's Queen Latifah.
There's something about that, right? It feels right.
Yeah, it's just Rembrandt, Crying Woman, Brown.
Yeah. We'll figure out the naming. It's fine. I don't know if Rembrandt could go either way. I have no idea. Maybe that's either gender could have it. All right, Jordan, your favorite character, Maggie Beckett's finally coming up. I think my guess is we meet her like at the like midpoint. She comes into the movie, and you're like, who's this character? She's sticking around.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess of a movie. Okay, Jamie's pick is Sydney Sweeney.
Oh yeah, of course. She is quite the it girl. Although I think Jenna Ortega might have knocked her off that post.
Yeah. Well, did we didn't cast her either, right? We have to cast one of those. But if they're the hot young actresses,
we may have to. I also kind of tried to aim for someone just like a hot commodity, but I went a little differently. I decided we'd have the acting debut of Taylor Swift.
That's not the acting debut. She was in Cats.
No, I forgot. How could I forget about Cats?
Yeah, everyone loved it.
All right, who do you got for your next one?
Well, I'm going back down the well, but I think the only way to do this justice is Carrie Wooher is coming back, de-aged.
You, like I, gave up on this category fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, it actually was for some reason the hardest because you realize after, I know it's not 5 seasons, but 40 episodes, you're like, they don't establish character at all. I don't know who she is.
No, it's tough to know. I mean, we didn't see all of her episodes, but it still is hard to nail her down. Listen, I'll be honest. I think I basically did the same thing. I did the Sydney Sweeney of 2005. I did Megan Fox.
I don't know.
I think if we got Sydney Sweeney on the table, I think we go that way. I think that makes way more sense. That's far more current and hip. Megan Fox, I think it just brings the wrong energy.
Right. I'm going to ask you though, Luke, and I did something that was bad. I forgot to pick a director for this. So who do you have directing this?
All right, I've got 2 possible directors here, Jordan. They'll both bring very different visions to this, and I think with the cast we have, either will work. I think they can work. Either would work with this cast. So,
do you want to do me a favor? Do you want to run down the cast again so I can remember who we picked, and then we'll pick that director?
Absolutely. So, in the Quinn Mallory role, we've got Liam Hemsworth coming in. He's back. He's back at the top. He's getting another kick at a franchise.
Yeah. Okay.
Then we've got Haley Lou Richardson as Wade Wells. She's a real up and comer now, coming off White Lotus. Everybody wants a piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean more
in a professional
sense.
Yeah.
Then we've got Professor Maximilian Arturo, played by James Spader. I'm happier with this choice every time I think about it.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite of all the cast.
Of course, got Rembrandt crying woman Brown now as Queen Latifah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun. I think it's a lot of fun. And then, yeah, I think this is great. Maggie Beckett is Sydney Sweeney. That seems right to me. Just seems perfect.
Okay, perfect. And no one's de-aged.
No one has to be de-aged.
We'll save a little money.
We'll save that money because we're going to need it for these two directors, Jordan.
Okay, who do we got?
All right, Jordan. So I'm going to pitch this to you. I know you're going to be soft on it. And I'm not saying we have to go this way, but I think there's a world where this makes sense. And I think when you hear it, you're going to agree that makes sense. But it's sliders. They're sliding to parallel dimensions. There's a lot of rules. There's a lot of science. There's a lot of things that don't make sense but are visually interesting. It's Christopher Nolan.
I don't know. Is this something he would do? Is he going to do a gritty retake of this?
I don't know what he does, but whatever it's going to be mind bending. You're going to be like, does this make sense? I'm not sure, and it's going to be sliding to like lots of universes. He's going to have a good time. I feel like it's right up his alley.
People are going to leave the theater like, did you like the movie? And they go, I don't know.
It was something. In the same sort of tone, not tone maybe, but in the same sort of vein, I picked someone who's got a good mind for creative things, for creative movie telling. He's a little more of an everyman's filmmaker, though, so maybe someone you'll latch onto a little more. I don't know if you've seen. I don't know how much of his work you might have seen, but I'm sure you've seen some of it. James Wan.
Oh yeah.
I've seen. I don't know if you saw *Malignant* recently, but I think if you watch *Malignant*, I think you can see there's this opportunity here where he'll have some mind-bending fun of his own.
I think that's the way to go. I think that makes sense in the tone of this, like. It's cool, it's hip, it's new, but it's an IP we had sitting around, and we want to, take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll have a little more control, a bit of a blockbuster where we'll have a franchise out of it. If it's Nolan, we only get one, and that's it.
Yeah. I think this is it. I think that's the movie.
Great, it's great. I think everyone at home sitting there being like, they're buying their tickets, they're pulling out their phones, they're getting on Cineplex.com.
They're writing their government official.
Dear Senator, Congressman, House of Commons representative.
Yeah, so I was thinking, I was delaying there because I was trying to think of what other countries have. I was like, write their MP. I'm like, oh wait, other countries don't have that. They're whatever, governor or something.
No, every country has a member of parliament, I'm quite sure.
It's the states. The states throws everything off.
Well, Jordan, now that we've envisioned the perfect version of the Sliders, shall we get into the final version of Sliders?
Yeah, the very, very not perfect version of the show.
Its final form in the IMDb summary for Season 5, Episode 18, The Seer. The Sliders arrive in a world where their exploits are well known through the efforts of a man called the Seer. As they prepare for the final jump home, the Seer warns them that instant death awaits. And that truncated summary was courtesy of Chapman_Glenn.
You were right last week when we did the reading, the story, the little fan fiction, that there was the character the Seer in it. You were like, oh, I think this is a thing for the end of the show. So you were right. Did you know that ahead of time?
I think I might have known that the final episode was the Seer. The way it was written, I'm just like, we're definitely being read the final scene of the final episode right now.
Right. It kind of does make more sense now.
But yeah, this we'll finally learn what leads up to it, I guess. And honestly, it's very funny. It starts with a previously on that I was just like, oh, how much information am I going to need to know? And then a previously on is just like, hey, we bumped into that Dr. Geiger bad guy again. He gave us a chip with the coordinates to go home. Okay, bye. I'm like, oh, well, that's not so bad.
It was one of the fastest recaps I've ever seen.
It was just like, you need one piece of information, and this is it. Good luck, everyone. But the episode begins on an Earth we've never been to before, Jordan. One that serves giraffe sandwiches and pork cola.
I know that was just supposed to be a throwaway joke, but like, would that have landed with anyone?
As soon as I was writing these notes and I got to write down pork cola, I immediately just imagined you very angry for some reason at the idea of pork cola and that was part of the episode.
It just was like, it's just so lazy. It's a little bit indicative of the show at this point, which is it feels so slapdashed and just like thrown together. Like, yeah, it's a world. Like, do you see anything interesting in this world? Like, yeah, they have funny drinks. Like, oh, okay. Glad you guys used your imagination.
They also had that giraffe sandwich.
Yeah, there you go. I guess there's more giraffes in this world. It's so dumb.
Would you eat a giraffe sandwich?
No, absolutely not.
Really?
No.
Someone's like, here's a little bit of giraffe meat. It's cut thin. It's like sliced into roast beef.
I like it's cut thin. That's gonna convince me. First they say no, then you go, oh, it's cut thin. I'm like, oh, it's cut thin, of course.
You're not even slightly curious.
No, I'm curious, but I have no interest in eating that. No. Would you eat it? You'd eat it?
What if someone was like, here, have a little giraffe? I'd give it a try.
Okay, hold on though. What if I said it's shaved real thin?
Yeah, absolutely. Then I'll be like, oh, it must be good that way.
Comes a little au jus, little dip.
Ooh, it sounds pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Little roast beef, little roast giraffe. Ooh.
Where can people send their complaint letters? Right to.
Oh, this is the thing they're going to complain about. Not everything off the top.
Not the Columbine comments.
All right, let's move on with this. So what we've seen from the pilot, or the not pilot, the previously on, we now know they have the coordinates to go back to Rembrandt's world, the thing they've been looking for this whole time, and they're basically sitting around talking about just like, all right, Rembrandt, now that we find the coordinates to Earth, we're going to go there. We don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to go back and try to take your home back from the Cro-Mags. And Maggie's just like, Rembrandt, I'd never leave your side. I would never go anywhere without you ever again. I'm coming with you. And I'm just sitting there being like, the air is poison. Remember, Maggie?
Yeah.
You'll die.
I thought the same thing, but why don't they just, if they can go anywhere they want, I'm sure at this point, after, I know it's been 5 years in terms of the show, but it's been quite some time. I'm sure they found some pretty close alternatives. Why don't they just go back to that planet, You
got to get your planet back, Jordan. That's the rules.
I guess, but yeah.
Although technically it's only Rembrandt's planet. No one else has a stake in it.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure. Are they all going to go back to their own planet? Or are they all going to go back to Earth that's taken over by the Cro-Mags?
They seem to all want to go help Rembrandt take his Earth back. Appears to be what is happening. Because it'll happen a couple times where they're like, we're a family. And they're like, yeah, we're a family. And I'm like, are you? Okay.
Yeah. You know what I like, though? We kind of joked about in the early days of the show that clearly the main characters were Arturo and, what's his face? Quinn. And they didn't really know what to do with Rembrandt and specifically Wade as much. And now as the show's gone on, obviously the characters have shifted and Rembrandt's the main character, and sort of so is Maggie. Then they have the well, we have to bring these two other characters. What do we do with them? They're like, just push them off to the side. I'm like, why did you bring them back as characters?
Have to have 4 sliders at all times. At any rate, they do slide. They jump into the slide hole, and they're like, well, this is it. This is it. We've got the coordinates. This new slide hole we're opening, it's taking us back to Rembrandt's Earth, and that's what's going to happen. So they hop in, and when they step out, they're in front of a courthouse where a full-on Sliders fan convention is waiting for them to cheer the arrival of the Sliders.
There was 2 things I liked. Was one, because everyone's got signs and stuff like, you're amazing. One of the signs said, bring back Wade, which made me laugh.
I also laughed at that one. I saw it too and was just like, man, you guys love commenting on your own show this late, don't you?
And the other thing is, this is essentially the same opening as we watched in season 1, where they arrive and they found out it's like Science World, and people who do science are like celebrities, and they're like a big group of people are cheering them on when they arrive. I'm like, this is the same opening.
Yeah, but they stripped away the subtext and now made it text. It's just like, this is about the show Sliders you're watching.
Yeah, that's true.
At any rate, what they come to discover very quickly is they haven't slid back to Rembrandt's Earth. And why this is never explained. Like, my understanding is they got the coordinates, they plugged them in, and they slid, but they've ended up on a different Earth, and no one ever explains why.
Yeah. I guess what it is the chip that Geiger gave them, it doesn't work.
But later they use it again and be like, well, now we're going to use the coordinates to go to Earth, our actual Rembrandt's Earth. It's like, well, then how did you end up on this in-between Earth?
Well, they had to beat the seer. Don't worry about it too much.
Just don't try not to think about it. At any rate, where they've landed on this Earth, there's an old man who had a heart attack one time. And after that heart attack, he started having visions of the Sliders' adventures. His name is the Seer.
Yeah, and it's not a lie. It's like I thought it was going to be a thing where later on they're like, oh, that was just like his bad way of getting around whatever nefarious plan he has. But it's like, no, that's what happens. He had a heart attack, now he sees visions. You're like, oh, okay.
Visions specifically of the Sliders.
Yeah, and later on we're going to see, and I don't know why, but he also paints, but what he seems to paint is exclusively just the Sliders, but what they are just like screenshot still images of episodes that are just lightly painted over. I'm like, So he also has perfect recall and is a talented artist, and that's what he chose to do. Is he's like, just to prove that I have this vision, I'm going to paint it.
Well, that's what it is exactly. He started having these visions, so he started painting and writing about the Sliders' adventures. And yeah, as you said, it looks like a screenshot that with like a slight paint effect over top of it. It's baffling to look at. And people of this earth loved the adventures of the Sliders so much that at this point they have even created their own TV show called The Sliders.
Yeah. This is, the whole episode has this sort of like knowing wink to the audience, but there's no comment behind it. There's no weight at all. So it's just kind of there. Like there's a lot of like, look, our actual show logo is in this, and there's like posters for the show and stuff. You're like, okay, and they're like, yeah. Anyway,
the feeling here is just like, you guys love how we're referencing ourselves, right? And it's just like, but there's like, it feels so totally off that you're like, it doesn't feel like anyone at home would be sitting there being like, I am enjoying this. It'd be like fuming at this.
Yeah, no one is at home saying they're enjoying it.
What I like, though, is that in the show The Sliders, Diana's double, Dr. Diana from the previous episode we saw, who just joined the cast, her double acts in the series. So it's a bit odd to see that. And then in the brief clip of the Sliders episode we watch, Rembrandt has returned. A write-in letter campaign has brought Rembrandt back to the show, and Rembrandt is now rejoining the four Sliders in season 5. And I'm just like, this is all very funny.
Arturo.
Oh, Arturo. I always get them so confused for some reason.
Arturo's back, and they're like, oh. And you know what? It seemed, maybe it wasn't intended, but it seemed kind of mean-spirited to have him back. I was like, the actor left and didn't want to be part of the show. They're like, then they have this like jokey version of him show up. I was like, eh.
Yeah, they just put a beard on a guy and said, look, Rembrandt or Arturo's back. I'm glad I don't have to do this much longer. I can't remember their names anymore. At any rate, the Sliders here are so popular that they're told that, quote, they have tens of thousands of fans, which I was just like, that's too low to have a TV show.
I thought the same thing, like tens of thousands of fans, and they apparently have like a board game and stuff. I'm like, that's not good, guys. Those are not good numbers.
Yeah, it was very funny. They're like decided to like name the number of fans. I'm like, it's a low number.
Maybe it was someone like, it was a note from like a writer had, but didn't realize how bad the show was doing on Sci-Fi. They're like, you guys are getting tens of thousands of people watching. They're like, awesome. Like, no, those are really bad ratings.
Oh, well. Anyway, this seer, his visions even prepared this Earth for the Cro-Mags. So when the Cro-Mags did, apparently they've shown up on this Earth already, but these people were able to drive them off with a synthetic Cro-Mag virus. So when they invaded, they just like released a virus and the Cro-Mags had to run away immediately. So they're Cro-Mag free on this Earth even because of the seer's visions.
And this is one of the like multiple things they drop in this episode, because this has the classic bad TV issue of giving way too much information and also not explaining any of it. So it's like, they have a chip that will get them home that apparently doesn't work. There's a guy who sees visions of them. There is, the Cro-Mags have been here and have left. And they also mentioned multiple times that the Cro-Mags like enslaved them at one point, because when we have to get to the mother, it's like bizarre. And then we all also now have the virus, but there's going to be multiple other things that they're going to have to, like spinning plates they're going to have in this episode.
Yes. Well, that's just it, because this is all the information, but there are a couple problems now facing the Sliders. One is great, they found a Cro-Mag virus that'll defeat the Cro-Mags. Seems like that's going to solve Rembrandt's problems back on his Earth, but it takes 2 days to synthesize the Cro-Mag virus, and the Sliders are only going to be here for a few hours, so they can't take the virus with them, I guess. But that's only a minor problem compared to the fact that the seer can occasionally also see the future, and he has foreseen that all 4 Sliders will die instantly upon exiting the next slide hole.
Yeah. And again, here's another thing, and you're like, oh, so you would think that would be the major point of the episode, but it's just like sort of one of the things they have to do, which is, well, do they stay on this planet where they're really famous, or do they go into the slide hole in the hope of saving the original world and seemingly multiple worlds from the Cro-Mags, but they may not be able to do it at all. It might be a moot point if they just die going through. Well,
and I would argue that they get all this information, they're brought to a hotel they stay at, they all sit down, and they're like, well, we don't have enough time to get the virus, so I guess we won't get that. And they said we'll die instantly when the next one comes, But who cares? Let's just slide. They don't care about either. They are so ready to slide without A, the virus, and B, with the threat of death. Like, they don't care about any information that's provided. They're just like, okay, whatever. We're just going to keep sliding.
Yeah, yeah. And do they even mention at this point, I think it's later in the episode, why we hear it's like the slide hole that's going to open, which we are going to see, is sort of like slightly unstable is what it is, which is giving the impression of why they may not make it.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't even think that's what it is, because as we'll go into it, like, we have these two things, these two debates about, like, they might die. They don't really seem to care that much, which I'm not 100% sure why they don't, but whatever. They're like, let's just keep going. And they're, with the remaining time on this planet, they're brought to a fancy reception that the Sears Inner Circle is throwing for the sliders. Here they get to Rembrandt and Maggie get to meet their doubles, who I guess are the doubles are excited to meet their famous twins. They like do appearances as them and stuff. Mm-hmm. Maggie could not be ruder to her double for no apparent reason. I was just like, what is happening here?
Yeah, there's a weird thing of like, yeah, they just don't respond like normal humans to any of the situations just because they're badly written characters at this point. So it's just like, what? But I just want to say real quick, because when they meet all their doubles, I did have the thought of the new Quinn. I was like, does he have a double? And they right away they're like, yeah, you don't have a double because you don't exist in this world.
I think I figured out what's happening with new Quinn, by the way, in the in-between episodes, because we were talking about last time, like, how is there a Quinn Mallory who doesn't look like the other Quinn Mallory, but like he exists, and like, you know, that was a big question we had last episode. I actually think he's just a guy who happens to have the same name.
Oh, is it really?
I don't know. I mean, I realized, I'm like, oh wait, two people could have the same name. Maybe all that's happened here is that two people had the same name, and these people just are like, oh, you're also Quinn Mallory? Okay, good enough.
I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but if you want to speak about people being rude, how he reacts to Quinn's mother is hilarious.
Well, let's talk about that, because old Quinn's mother, Mrs. Mallory, she's on this Earth too, which is explained away by saying that when the Cro-Mags took over this Earth temporarily, it's temporarily enslaved the Earth pre-virus, they brought a bunch of workers with them to their slave camps. And Mrs. Mallory from the pilot, the one who's been running more or less throughout the series, other than that one time they recast her, but she came back. She's back. She's on this Earth, and she's so happy to see the sliders. Although she doesn't know a single one of them, not even Rembrandt, I don't think.
Yeah.
And the man who is Quinn doesn't look like her son anymore.
Yeah, and they try to have this thing, and it's not a terrible idea, but that like she recognizes something in him, and so she's like basically goes over to him, and it's like that, you know, scene she's trying to figure out by looking at him. She's like touching his face, and she's like, she's like, you know, is any part of my Quinn in there? And he's like, get away from me, you old bag. To be fair, I felt on Quinn's side a little bit, like if some lady just came up and started touching my face like that, I'd be like, no thank you. Yes, but you also don't have the consciousness of someone else inside of you. You think he'd be a little bit more forgiving if he had a bit of Quinn in him.
I will say, we don't know what happened over the course of this season, but this episode, they make it very clear that whatever consciousness of old Quinn was in him has died off, and that Quinn is dead.
Yeah, that's true. The idea that what I thought they were going to do, that they were going to constantly play with this like struggle within him of his personality. Who is he? Maybe he becomes a new person with these two personalities fusing. Yeah, they seem to be like, no, he's gone. That was just a memory.
At some point, I think they even make a claim. I think the seer's just like, I saw all your deaths. Maggie, Wade, Quinn, Colin. I'm like, wait, Colin too?
Colin he blew apart, remember?
He was just unstuck from time. I didn't realize that they just wrote him out. One of those jumps he made, he died. I don't know. He's gone. Anyway, they're there. They're at this big ceremony. They're meeting their doubles. They're meeting Mrs. Mallory, who, you know, they brought her back for an episode because it's like a good finale up thing to bring her back, even though it's like hard to make the drama work because she has no connection to these people. But you see what they're going for.
That is the issue there. It's hard to make the drama work because not only does she not have any connection to these characters, there's just even the audience doesn't have a connection between these two people, because if you're someone who watches Sliders now, I don't know, in my head it's like there was people who watched Sliders the original version, and there's people who watched the new version of the show. I just can't imagine anyone who watched it all the way through. And maybe that's incorrect, but it's just like I just felt anyone watching the show would be like, who is this lady? I don't even know who this is. I never watched the original episodes.
If you did, you'd have walked away by now.
Yeah, exactly.
At any rate, they're at this party, and here the seer reveals that he's starting a new religion called slide-ology because apparently he's L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah, again, this is another thing, and I was like, is this a comment on something like that, like a self-made religion like Scientology or something? But I don't think it is, or if it is, it's just left there for the viewer to put together the pieces.
Yeah, it's a little predatory, it seems, but like they don't really spend much time on it, and it's just like, what? Slide-ology? And it's very funny because he's like, he hasn't talked to the sliders that much. He talked to them briefly when they arrived, and he's giving this speech where he's just like, and I'm super happy the sliders are here to help me. And they're just, the sliders are literally standing there like, what? This is the first we're hearing about this. And like they ask them to say a few words, which is maybe my favorite part of the episode is Rembrandt gets up in front of the mic, he says, good night, and he just walks off.
Yeah. It was pretty bold.
And the actor playing Rembrandt really surprisingly nails a lot of these scenes. I was just like, that was very funny. That was well done. Good job, everybody.
Well, and let's just say, he's the strongest actor and character left on this show. And I always liked him as a character, and I just felt like they didn't do anything with him. But I know he became like the comic relief. But it was just like the characters they brought, each one seems to get like a paler imitation of a human being, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. They get back anyway to this hotel they're staying at, and Quinn's mom drops by again. She drops by to kind of apologize for how weird she was at the thing, and they explain it away. They're like, she has PTSD from all the Cro-Mag stuff, which you're like, all right, fine, fair enough.
Yeah. And I do like, though, that's new Quinn. That's his arc and plot through this episode is basically like, I'm too mean to her. I gotta be nicer later.
I know.
You're like, okay, sure, that's that. I will give him something to do.
That'll be by the end. He's just like, he takes her aside and says, listen, I don't remember you or really know who you are, but like, part of me thinks you're a nice lady. And she's like, good enough for me.
No, it's more than that. He's like, look, I know your son used to be inside of me, and he's clearly very dead now, and I don't even barely have any memories of it at all. But I have a sense that maybe, in some way, he had some feelings for you. I was like, oh, you put that together, that he might have had some feelings for his mother, huh? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, that's enough for her.
Yeah, and she's like, wow, that's good. That's just as good as having my son back. New sliders.
My favorite thing was there's also a heart-to-heart between Quinn's mom and Maggie, and it's really treated in a way like this is her daughter-in-law or something.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And then Maggie she does this thing where she sits down, she's talking, having this heart-to-heart.
I loved it.
And she's like trying to explain Quinn's like old Quinn's situation. And she like takes her hand. She's like, looks into Mrs. Mallory's eyes, and she's like, I had an uncle once who died, and they donated his organs. Does that make sense? I was like, what?
I know that was my favorite scene in this episode, because she sits down. It's like, she's like, I'm gonna have a heart to heart with her. And it's like, it might make sense if it was Wade, but it's not. It's Maggie. So
yeah, she's never seen this woman in her life.
Yeah, she's like, let me just explain something to you. Have you ever heard of donating organs? Anyways, my uncle did that. So does this make sense to you? And the mom's like, it absolutely does. And she's like, great. Glad we solved this. I was like, what is this scene supposed to achieve at all?
It was so funny. She just like full stop. She's just like, and they donated his organs. Long pause. Does that make sense? I'm like, no. What?
I think what it really is that she's dumb. And she was like, can you explain this to me? How is he living without his organs? Is he dead too?
One time, my mom said the dog ran away and went to a farm. Does that make sense?
She's just everything. That's a better character, where everything she says at the end, she goes, does that make sense?
I just said a bunch of words. Did they mean anything?
Yeah, it's so bizarre. And I don't know why it amused me so much that they brought this mother back. Because, again, you're saying they want this, like, emotional
connection to the first episode.
Yeah, connection to the first episode. But you can't have that anymore. You got rid of those characters. It's done.
There's like, we need emotional resonance to the first episode, but none of the actors will come back because we drove them all off. Who's left?
I know. I know they didn't know this was going to be the last episode, but there was time for, if they wanted to actually do these sort of inside jokes, you know what would have been funny? Is in the Sliders episode, it's the original cast. When they go and watch it on TV, I was like, that would have been cute. It's the original cast back as a cameo, or they do something like that. But it's like, no. Everyone that was involved in the show hates you.
Yeah, they're not coming back.
Yeah.
Anyway, they leave Mrs. Mallory in the hotel room to have a nap or something. They're just like, let her sleep. And walk outside to slide away. They've solved none of their problems. They're like,
I loved it.
you have no virus, even though there's one here. You haven't even tried to find a solution. And B, you're going to die instantly. And they're like, it's fine. Let's just go up behind the hotel and we'll slide.
It was one of my favorite things because it just felt like there's a scene missing because they're literally just, it was like the most low stakes problems they have, which is, why is Mrs. Mallory there? They're like, oh, she went to the room to nap. I'm like, hold on. She came over to your hotel room, had a conversation with you, and then was like, yes, I'm tired now. I'm going to have a nap. She's not like 90 years old. She's like a 60-year-old woman. Anyways, then they were like, we need to find some way out of this hotel because not only are there crowds around the hotel, there's like people, like some armed guards in these cars, and they won't be letting us out. They're like, we need to find a way out. Hard cut, they're behind the hotel, and they're like, anyways, we got out. I was like, well, I'm glad that you mentioned there was no way out.
I mean, and to call them crowds of Sliders fans waiting outside the hotel, there were tens of people outside the hotel.
I know. I am allowing that because I think there's some budgetary restraints. I think the idea behind it was there was lots and lots of people.
Yes. They get behind the hotel, they open the slide hole, Rembrandt goes to jump in, but someone's plugged the slide hole.
Yeah, and how you see that happen is, it is funny though, because you've mentioned it now a couple times, but it's hard to get past the point where the viewer, if you're invested in this episode, and I don't know why you would be, you know the problem is they shouldn't be sliding because they might die, and you're like, why are they still doing it? And they just like, we just need to keep propelling this plot forward. But when they go to do it, they basically hit like a force field, is what you would call it, right? They sort of jump and just like, you've seen it before in TV, so they sort of like just bounce off like an electricity wall.
Yeah, exactly, and kind of bounce down. And then when it's done, they're like, uh-oh, we better check the timer because, as we know, if we don't catch the slide hole, it won't reset for 29 years, which has been the overarching sort of Damocles over the head at all time. And they pull out this thing, they're like, oh, it just reset to 3 days. And I was just like, wait, have they never tested this before? Did they just assume it would be 29 years?
No. What it is, Luke, is that something particularly weird has happened with this slide hole and on this world, that's why it's reset. When they tried going through the slide hole, it just reset things. It was only this specific time.
Okay. It wasn't that they just never tried it before.
No. It was something specific. So like there's some nexus happening here. It's not, they realize that there's other things at play.
Yeah. So they immediately suspect the seer's trapping him there to help him with his slide-ology, and they go to confront him about it, but he's like, I don't know anything about it. Like maybe my daughter, she's pretty cutthroat and ruthless, and we haven't talked about her because she's a minor part of this. But did you recognize her?
I did. It's Jennifer Hedrick, who played Vash in Star Trek: Next Generation. Spotted her right away.
I know, it was very funny. I'm like, oof, this is not quite the same role.
Yeah. No, and you know what? I have to say, I think she's stronger than our cast. She's a stronger actress, but it's a really bad role because you know right away there's something sketchy with her. She's almost playing like a Disney cartoon villain here, and they're not good enough at hiding it. So you just have like, you don't know what her motivation is, and we're going to eventually find it's like, she's like, because with this religion, and you're like, what? Does that make sense?
Well, that's exactly what the seer says here. He's like, well, the Church of Scientology is bankrupt, so we kind of hoping you'll stick around and help us refill the coffers. I'm like, oh my god, that's the whole plan.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know if it works at all, you know?
I mean, it's pretty low stakes. And I will say, let me tell you one thing. If I am starting a bogus religion, Jordan, built around 4 people from another world, I 100% want those 4 people to martyr themselves so I can do whatever the fuck I want with them afterward.
Yeah, it doesn't help your religion. Like, this is not meant to be offensive at all, but like Christianity, if Jesus came back and was hanging around, that's not going to help you at all.
Jesus is going to be pretty disappointed with how things are going.
He's like, hold on, you guys said I said what? No, but like, it just, it works the way it is because of your belief and your faith. The sort of, if they're making a comment on the commercialism of religion, and again, I don't think they're smart enough to do that. The point could have been that they are already making millions of dollars through TV shows and board games and talk shows and appearances and all this sort of stuff. They don't need them. They already have everything they need. So why would them bringing them back change any of the money they're already making? It didn't. I just don't understand.
Yeah, it does seem like the plot would be you'd want to get the sliders off of your world as quickly as possible.
Yes, because they're like, we've sold you as one thing, and now you are going to disappoint people because we've created versions of yourselves that no one could achieve.
I mean, they're going to disappoint people because they're jerks. Maggie's a huge jerk. Like, no one wants to
Well,
meet
there's
the real
that.
Maggie.
There's that. But anyways, yeah, it's, again, this one, there's some interesting ideas, but they're so deeply planted in, like, this surface level of, like, I know I said deeply planted in surface, but it's like, there's just hints of things. You're like, what? Is there an interesting idea there? Like, I guess, maybe, but they have zero interest in exploring things, because this show has always had a problem of just wanting to propel forward and, like, don't think about it too much. And it didn't bother me as much when it was more fun, but this is not, like, I don't know if this sounds fun listening to it, but, like, it's not that fun an episode. It just feels like they're going through the motions, but it's like, but why? Like, you guys decided this is the story you want to tell. Why are you so blasé about it?
It's for the paycheck, baby.
I guess, yeah.
It is true, though. Like, there are things that are said that if you stare at them hard enough, you're like, is that an idea? You just have to keep staring at it being like, am I seeing a concept? I don't know.
Yeah, and again, you could have had the characters react in a different way, because they have in different worlds, and to varying degrees of success of, like, you know, the world Rembrandt went to where he had everything he always wanted. He was the most famous he could ever be, and it's like, well, now, does the character stay or not? Does he stay, but he knows he didn't really earn it because it's actually not him? You know, there's interesting ideas, but, like, they don't explore that at all in this world. They just get here, as you said, and they're just like, well, we've got to get out of here. There's no, like, maybe this is the best we could do, or maybe we shouldn't, you know, is it we sacrifice ourselves for the greater good by going through this slide hole, or I don't know. They're just, it's not the concern at all of this show.
No. Well, now that they're stuck here for 3 more days, they're like, well, we got to figure out A, who plugged that slide hole, but B, if we have 3 days, why, that's enough time to incubate a Chromag virus. Maybe we should look into that finally. We weren't that interested before, but now we're like, Chromag virus. I think I remember someone saying something about that.
Yeah, it is funny also, it's like halfway through the episode, I'm like, why don't we just cut that whole thing of them resetting the clock and just have them be interested in getting the virus from the beginning?
I know, it's very silly. Rembrandt and Maggie split off because they're going to go visit a Sliders fan they met at the gathering, the Sears gathering, and he's a university student, so they're going to see if maybe his access to the university can help them get a sample of the virus, because apparently the virus is under lock and key. And they visit the slider at the student at his Sliders student club, where they're playing the Sliders Trivial Pursuit game. And of course, we meet all these classic characters, Jordan. Everyone's down there playing. Vernon, Lisa, Nubsy, Schmo.
I know. I don't know why they decided to call the characters that.
I was like, this is Nubsy and this is Schmo. I'm like, well, those aren't people's names.
Yeah. It just was a weird, I don't know, this episode's so badly written.
And then as we come into this scene, they're playing Sliders Trivial Pursuits, and I don't know if this is a joke or not, and because it's never mentioned again or commented on, but they're geniuses, or they're not geniuses, they're just like trivia nerds for sliders. They know everything about the sliders, basically. And the one is answering a question. They're like, well, of course Maggie was in the Marines as a captain. And I'm just like, no, she wasn't. She wasn't in the Air Force.
I didn't even catch that.
It's not the right answer. And I'm just like, is this a joke? Or do you guys just not know anymore?
I think they probably don't know. I think they just didn't look. Because there's a couple, like, sort of knowing wink jokes in this episode. Like they do, like at the very end of the scene, they'll mention that episode where, remember the one with Rembrandt and his, like, friend who tried kidnapping them? They'll, like, mention stuff like that. But again, it's just, it feels like, I don't know if they knew this was the last episode. And they're like, hey, remember the glory days? Here's references to it. Because it just feels like you're just showing how pale in comparison the show is now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird episode. It's with the whole, like, sliders are famous here, so everything is kind of a wink and a nod, right? So they have to, it's all jam-packed with, like, sliders references.
Also, it may be not fair, but you can really see how low budget this is at this point in the show. Like, all the scenes are clearly taking place in a back lot. It doesn't look real at all. And even the set deck of, like, the posters of the sliders and stuff, it looks like they printed it off printers with, like, low ink. Everything looks cheap.
Well, these students down here, they have an idea. Like, they can't get Rembrandt the original virus, but Vernon's like, my second favorite sci-fi show, Space Journey, gives me an idea.
Yeah.
And that idea is everyone on this planet has traces of the anti-Chromag virus just in their blood due to it being released. They're all carrying it. It's all they've been essentially what would the word be? Immunized against it?
Yeah, that's right.
He's like, so what if I just give you some of my blood and you could use that to incubate the virus and you could take that incubated virus with you? And they're like, let me just grab one of Nubsy's diabetic needles and just draw my blood in front of you.
Well, you know, again, there's an interesting idea there that could have been the episode. The idea that they have to, whatever, immunize themselves to get over. That's the way they're going to solve this ongoing war with these aliens. But it was done in the weirdest way ever. They're like, hey, is it convenient he's diabetic? I'm like, okay, sure.
Why not? Okay. We cut back to Quinn and Diane, who, when we last saw them, they were tasked with tracking down the seer's daughter to find out what's going on with this whole blocking the slide hole thing. But what we see is them getting back to the hotel room being like, I couldn't find her. I don't know where she is, so I guess we'll just go back to the hotel.
That was classic Sliders. If they just show up into a scene and we're like, anyways, we were over here doing something, but we didn't find anything. You don't like us as characters.
What they do find, though, is Mrs. Mallory is getting roughed up by some goons, and they immediately get in a fight with these goons, and the goons manage to get their hands on the slide timer, and they smash it, destroying the slide timer. So, oh no, the slide timer destroyed. Yeah,
and I always, so did they ever make it clear? So if it just the portal won't open, then that's basically what they're saying, right?
I think so. Without the timer to shoot the little laser out the front of it, no slide hole.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the slide hole would still open. They just couldn't control it in any way going forward. But I guess that's what it is. They're just like, whoa, no, we're stuck on this planet. I'm like, well, it's not the worst place to get stuck. It's better than old giraffe sandwich world.
What I like about this scene is it's a big fight sequence. The slider gets smashed, and the goons run out the door to the hotel. And the goons are out the door, and the actors for Maggie and Rembrandt must be standing on the outside of the door because they run out. And then the other two just walk in as if two men hadn't just fled their room. They just walk in casually like, hey, guys, what's going on? I'm like, well, two men just ran into your room. Like, you're not slightly curious?
Yeah, it's just not very good.
Anyway, Mrs. Mallory finally mentions to them that she and the seer's daughter, they were in the same work camp when the Cro-Mags took over. And she happens to know that when the Cro-Mags fled, the daughter happened to hoard a bunch of Cro-Mag technology in a warehouse that she knows about so that, maybe they can go to that warehouse and find something to help them slide after all.
I love that the mother character was brought in and she's just instrumental in this episode, and they just have this 65-year-old woman just hanging out with them the whole time.
Yeah, she's just like, maybe I should be on the team. I'm a better actress.
Wouldn't it be better if they had just replaced one of the characters and that's who it was? Instead of having Quinn, it's Quinn's mom.
Honestly, I would. If it was Rembrandt and Quinn's mom on adventures, I'd be on board.
Yeah, it's a better show.
At any rate, they head to this warehouse where they immediately find the slide hole blocker, and they're just like, hey, this thing must block slide holes. Let me just turn that off real quick. Just push a button. It's over. And the seer's daughter then, of course, busts in with goons. She's got guns on them. She's like, well, I'm just going to kill you now because you're a problem for slide-ology. I'll just get your doubles to replace you on this planet. And she's like, oh, wait, except for New Quinn, you don't have a double here, right? Well, then I'll, quote, have some hack TV writers come up with an explanation. And I'm just like, is this self-hatred? Is this self-harm we're seeing?
I know. It's maybe it's like we're going to hit ourselves first before you guys hit us because we know how bad this is.
It was just so weird. I'm just like, all right, come on, everybody. We all know you're not doing a great job with these episodes, and you clearly know it, but why are we drawing so much attention to it?
Yeah, so... Anyways, but I like that they come in with the guns and then immediately does the old seer shows up too, right? And he's like, what's happening? And she's like, don't listen to it, old man. I'm in charge now.
Well, you see, we haven't talked about it much, but throughout the episode, whenever the sliders go do something on this planet, like see some college kids, the seer has a vision of them doing it.
Yeah.
And so he happened to have a vision of his daughter busting in with guns. So he kind of swings into the rescue, which is a lot for an elderly man. He just kind of walks in the room, basically. But when he shows up, a fight breaks out. Sliders, of course, win. And they toss the bad people and the bad daughter into a closet somewhere. And Then we see cut to Diana. She's standing at a machine. She's like, hey, I got this Chrome Egg slide device to work or something. I don't know. I just push some buttons. It's going to work. Unfortunately, though, the slide hole is only big enough for one of us.
Yeah. I was like, how do you know? But they just do.
She's just like, I don't know. Maybe it's kind of damaged or something. I don't know. Who knows? And you see Rembrandt in the background, like, messing around. You're like, no, Rembrandt's up to something. And he turns around, and he's like, haha, I've shot that nerd's blood into me, so I guess I have the Chrome Egg virus. And I'm just like, everyone up till now has said it takes 2 days to synthesize a working Chrome Egg virus. You've just shot a man's blood into your body. I don't know if that will work.
Yeah, it's the problem that none of them are scientists anymore, so he's just done something very ill-advised.
He just gave himself hepatitis.
Yeah, in terms of the in-world logic, the idea now is that he has the virus inside of him. He will go to a world, and I guess someone will, in that world, he's hoping will help him thus synthesize the virus out of his blood. That's, I think, the idea.
I don't think so, because as we remember from last episode, he calls himself Typhoid Remy. I think he thinks he just is like a virus carrier now.
He's just going to kiss a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, they got the slide hole open. He's put it in. They're all very sad. They're like, don't do it, Remy. He's like, it's up to me. If I make it, the seer will know, and you can follow after me once you fix this machine. And, you know, Remy goes. He does the big thing. He jumps into the slide hole. They're like, will he die instantly? They're like, I don't know. Maybe we've changed the timeline because all 4 of us didn't go. They're like, well, let's go ask the seer. And they walk over. He's like, oh, yeah, the seer died of a heart attack. So, sorry, cliffhanger, everybody.
Yeah, and that's how they end it. The 3 of them standing in this world. And you're like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
You're like, hey, it's all those characters we don't like. They're stuck on this world. The end.
The end. Well, Jordan, we've now watched all we're going to watch of Sliders.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some final notes here for you.
Sure.
So, as you might recall from very, very early for us this year on the podcast, we watched a little show called First Wave.
Mm-hmm. I do remember.
Now, much like Sliders, First Wave was also picked up after one season. They did it in one season, and and Sci-Fi came in like, we're starting this network. We want to pick up 2 seasons from you. And that's the same thing that happened on Fox. Fox canceled Sliders, and they came in, they're like, let's commission 2 seasons from you. We want to do this. Now, Sci-Fi was very clear up front. We are commissioning 2 seasons from you. Unlike First Wave, which said, oh, we're so grateful, we'll wrap it up in those 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Showrunner David Peckinpah, that's his name, I've written down here, David Peckinpah, he, in everything I've read, I hate to say it, but he comes off as a real piece of work in everything you read about him. But he did not want to accept that he was only getting 2 seasons. He did not like that they were not going to give him another one. So he, out of spite, wrote a season 5 finale cliffhanger because he was mad at them for not giving him another season.
Well, and what you get though is this not very good episode. Not that like it would have made much difference if they got home, because who cares about these characters, but it would have been nice if there was some sort of resolution.
But yeah, that's just it. It's just like, you knew the restrictions 2 years ago when you took over, and you're just so annoyed that you won't get another one that you're like, well, I'm going to make it bad and make it a cliffhanger. And I mean, I guess I can see maybe part of the logic is he's hoping that, like, as they mentioned in this episode, all the letter writing campaigns, is like, maybe he's just like, if I do this, I'll force their hand and they'll give me my 6th season. And they're just like, no, we only paid for 2 because that's what we wanted. And I don't know why you squandered it, but I guess that's how it ends. And it's so funny. Like, everything I read about this showrunner, like, none of it's good. And I mean, he's passed away now, so he really can't defend himself.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I'm like, why does this one person have so much bad press?
Well, and it's interesting to see because we watched a show not too long ago, Sequest, that had in some ways some similar things happen, you know, kind of started out pretty well to some effect, went through a lot of turmoil behind the scenes, some cast issues, had to make some changes. But I will say this for Sequest, and it's an argument to make which is a better or worse show. Sequest came back in the 3rd season, and I think their course corrections made a lot of sense. It may not have been the same show it started as it started, but I think it became its own thing, and you could see, oh, I understand there's an attempt here to make something interesting. Sliders, it was just like watching like a piece of fruit on a counter just rot. Like it just got sadder and sadder and got weaker and weaker. And again, the whole point of the sliding was to have fun adventures kind of solved through science or solve, you know, some sort of sometimes having like a moral quandary, sometimes it's just a fun adventure, but it's about these characters and how you want to spend time with them. But it's like, then they got rid of all the characters and the idea of the worlds even being fun. Like, again, the little cold opening was always kind of a silly thing of, here's an idea, we're not going to be able to show you it for budgetary reasons, but this is a crazy world they're just about to jump out of. But the one they start with is, they've got giraffe sandwiches. That's the crazy world. It's just like, it's so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate. I mean, obviously, they lost a lot of budget when they moved to sci-fi. Like, that was going to happen when you went to cable. But you have to admit, or maybe you don't have to admit, that maybe that's the wrong phrasing. But the one thing about Sliders that is kind of the advantage is it's not necessarily a big budget show. Like, it's a show where the world can be similar everywhere you go. It's just kind of about how you play it. So you don't really need like big effects. You don't necessarily need chrome eggs. It's just, you're supposed to be going to a world that's just like your own, but a little bit different. So really, like, you could say, like, you could complain, like I'm sure there was complaints in the making of the show. They're like, I don't give us enough money, we can't do anything. Just like, I guess, but like, your show's not really built around like big effects.
No, you're right. Where it's interesting is, they come to a world, they want it to be home, and it's almost there, but something's off that just isn't right, and they just can't stay there, and there's a thing to fix because of that, like, whatever it may be. But you're right, it's like, you guys use your imagination. There's a million ways you can get around budget problems, as opposed to just like, whatever this was. Like, this is just a bad episode of TV.
Yeah, like if you cut Sequest's budget to sci-fi levels, you're going to have a problem. Like, you're going to have a real problem telling that story. But it just doesn't feel like that's not necessarily a Sliders problem.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Anyway, I just thought I'd give you that last note that, like, as you've noted, it was like a cliffhanger, but it was a cliffhanger for no reason. Like, it's not like they were like thought they might get a second season or sixth season. They knew it was over, and still the showrunner was like, no. Let's not give any closure to anyone.
Yeah, they should have spent those 2 years trying to butter up the original cast to come back for the very end. That's what they should have done.
Well, did not work. I did hear something about when in my readings. Apparently, when they moved to sci-fi, what's his name, Tracy Treme, the original creator. Apparently, they like courted him to bring him back because they thought he might be able to keep. Maybe it was at the end of season 4. They thought him coming back might be able to keep Jerry O'Connell in the mix. So they sort of brought him back with the idea of like, we're bringing back the original creator. It might get a bit better. He's going to come back. But they'd already signed like a 2-year contract with Peckinpah. And they were like, well, we've already paid all this money, so we're not dropping him. And Treme did not want to work with him, obviously. And they're like, well, fire him or I'm not staying. And they're like, well, we already paid him the money, so I guess you're not staying.
And yeah, it's just kind of a shame. And not that this was like the most amazing show to begin with, but I'll say, like, I think we both really liked the pilot back in the day, back when we started this.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think maybe that's where it ended.
Yeah, but maybe you're right. Maybe it was a fun TV movie idea, and the problem is it didn't have the legs for 5 years, mixed with all the problems.
They never had a showrunner who knew how to like activate it. Like, it just at no point in the run did it feel like anyone working on it really knew what to do with it.
Yeah, maybe that's true.
Because I mean, if you think back to the first season, like those episodes also weren't very good.
No, they weren't, but they had something. I don't know. Maybe there was like an element of charm to them that is just faded over time.
I mean, definitely by the end, any charm on the show has been stripped away. I mean, and I will give it this. Like, the early seasons, at least, like, they're like, what if women ran the world and, like, men had to stand up to them and we don't learn anything from it? But, like, that was its bigger problem, was, like, they had an idea. They just didn't know how to execute it. Whereas in the late episodes, they don't even have an idea. They're like, I don't know. Stuff happens. Next episode.
Yeah. Well, that is what it is, especially this last season, season 5. It's just stuff happens. And even, like, the fight scenes just seem like afterthoughts. Like, they're like, someone is going, hey guys, at about 35 minutes you better have people fight, because there's like 2 scenes where they're just like an action scene. I'm like, was this needed? It sounds like people are drifting off, get a fight scene.
Well, Jordan, what do you want to rate The Seer?
It's not the worst episode of the show we've seen, but it's not good. I didn't enjoy watching it. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 10. 2
out of 10.
Yeah,
I think it's a fair rating. I think a 2 out of 10. It's not the worst episode we've seen of Sliders. It's far from the best episode. I will also go 2 out of 10.
Yeah, that felt about right. Because I was like, do I give it a 3 out of 10? I'm like, nah, it's not a 3. This episode's not good enough for a 3.
I was thinking maybe a 2.5, but I'm like, 2 is probably fine. Like, what am I giving it a 0.5 for?
Well, what's our final rating overall for the show?
Let me punch into the Continuum Drag computer here, and I'm going to find out what our final series average is for Sliders. All right, Jordan, you ready for the overall series average for Sliders?
I'm going to guess 4.1.
Close. It is 3.99.
Ooh, that's got to be one of our lower ones, huh?
I mean, definitely wasn't one of the better things we've watched. And I know you asked for this, so I've had the computer draw this up for you too. This was off air, but you kind of wanted to know what the difference was between the Fox average rating and the Sci-Fi average rating.
That's right.
So if we look at it just in terms of like everything up to the end of season 3, basically when it was still on Fox, of the episodes we watched, it had a rating of 4.85.
And what did it have for the Sci-Fi years?
And to be fair, we didn't watch a lot of Sci-Fi Years. I think we've watched
right.
a total of 5 episodes. But the Sci-Fi Years series average is 2.1.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's about right.
Yeah, it seems about right. I mean, I don't know if it had stayed on Fox, if it wouldn't have kept sliding anyway. But yeah, it's those Sci-Fi Years did not go well.
Yeah, they were really rough. And you feel bad for even some of the actors. Like this guy, Robert Floyd, I guess his name was, who played Quinn Mallory. It's like, I don't know anything about him. He doesn't seem like a particularly strong actor, but they're not doing him any favors.
Yeah, I mean, no one's being granted any favors with the kind of writing that was happening on this show. Like, at least in some of the early Sci-Fi Network things, like you didn't love it, but I liked when we saw that repertory theater and like at least the art department had put the names of movies with alternate castings that like were rumored, right? I mean, as you said, by the end of this like 18th episode of season 5, they don't have ink in the printers anymore.
Yeah, it's just everything just looks bad, and you just it feels like no one involved cares at all, and maybe that's unfair. Maybe there were people that were giving it their all, but it really doesn't feel like it's translating at all.
Yeah, it is too bad. Well, Jordan, that wraps it up for Sliders.
Unless, as you're going to say, unless people are going to force us to watch more episodes.
That's right. There's bonus episodes for charity, which is something we've discussed quite a bit this year, but concept is very simple. We jump out of series all the time, whether it be the Escape Pod or we're doing a best of, and we miss a bunch of episodes just because, it's hard. We can't watch all these things, especially when they're bad. We need our sanity to be saved. But for a donation to charity, we'll go back and watch an episode of your choosing that we've missed from a series we've covered. You can find a list of approved charities as selected by our previous guest on our website. continuumdrag.podbean.com is the address there. Or on social media, there's a link in the bio you can follow to see all this information too. You make a donation to one of those charities, we'll go back and watch an episode of your choosing. You'll get a nice bonus episode in the feed. It's a fun way to get another round of us talking about a show like Sliders, like First Wave, like all kinds of things we've watched. And it's a good way to give to charity. So give it a thought. Maybe it's something you might enjoy.
And I wouldn't mind watching one of the early seasons of Sliders again, but if I have to watch one of these season 5 episodes, I'll be pretty irritated.
Don't give them ideas, Jordan.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if you have any questions about our coverage of Sliders, about bonus episodes for charity, you can email us at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And, of course, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, we're going to have clips from these episodes of Sliders. This single episode of Sliders will have all the clips you can stand from the final episode of Sliders.
Yeah. It just should be all just scenes of the mom walking around kind of confused. Just, who are these people? Why am I in this episode?
I guess you're like my son. I'm really struggling to find my motivation for this scene.
Yeah. Why did they bring me back?
You can find all of that at the handle @Continuum Drag. There we go. I figured it out. That'll all be available for you online. But that wraps it up. We're done with Sliders, and now we can move on to other things. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I will see you next week.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.